Yeah. Okay. Looks like we are live here on YouTube via the StreamYard. Not that they're sponsoring anything, but it's the free account, so I have to keep that up there.
For sure, for sure. Yeah,
Talking.
we paid for ours. It was expensive.
Yeah. I'm working on it. I want to engineer my own OBS, and but you're gonna. I think you still. I don't
Have
know.
to have some kind of platform, I believe. I'm not a computer
I'm learning a
expert.
lot. I'm learning a lot about this because the end game is a podcast, but right now it's just live stream to my YouTube channel. I'm Sean Ongley. This is Marcus from Aquarian Anarchy.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure and responsibility to give you a good interview because you're taking a chance on me. I'm just re-entering. I used to have a podcast. I used to do community radio and stuff like that, but kind of like coming out of nowhere again in life. Later, maybe older and wiser, not as energetic, but close.
Right.
Close.
And you decided to interview this crazy weird guy out in the middle of Indiana as one of your your first live streams coming back in. Woo.
Yeah. Well, I want to go all over the place. Like I'm pretty far out. My thinking is pretty far out there. Most people would reject it, right? But unfortunate for them because it's generally correct, proven correct, and over time. And but yeah, my perspective is shifting because I'm gone from like total lefty community radio shows to being disillusioned when the whole Hillary, Bernie, Trump thing year. Now I'm like, I'm not becoming. I think it's foolish when you move to the other side. You're like, oh, I've been voting Democrat. Now I'm voting Republican. They're the true party. You're like, well, you just got ensnared again. It's like somebody that leaves a cult to go into another cult. Right. And it's so like I feel like I can talk to both sides. Maybe that's to my advantage.
Absolutely. And be clear, there's not just two sides. And you know, you talk about voting. I don't vote. Why would I? And I've said this millions of times, but it's still true. Why would people who drone bomb babies care what you voted for? These are the same people that do evil, heinous stuff. They're not going to give up power just because you voted. Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe that, you know, educating the masses using the media is a bad thing. You know, I helped Adam Kokesh in his campaign to try to get the Libertarian nomination for president of the United States. And I did that for about 3 years. And do I think that was a waste of time? Absolutely not. Lots and lots and lots and lots of people saw him on Kennedy before really any other libertarian, at least in some time, had been on television. And I did that. I put Adam Kokesh on Kennedy being interviewed by Judge Andrew Napolitano at about 8:00 in the evening. So it was in prime time. I did that. And I put somebody who was preaching the gospel, if you will, of freedom on primetime TV, and telling people that they would be better off without a federal government to their face. And so I don't think that it is completely worthless to get involved in politics. I just don't think that's where we're going to win. And it may be a mechanism involved, but it's not going to be where we win. But when it comes to sides, it isn't just red team, blue team. I'm on black team. I don't believe in flags. I know that I have yellow and black behind me, but if you look closely, there's a little bit of red poking through there, and that is. I tend to be what people would call an anarcho-capitalist. I actually would not define myself that way, but I tend to lean that way. But I'm also influenced by people like Emma Goldman, Benjamin Tucker, and other anarchists who would be considered lefties. And like you said you were kind of a left person. So was I. When I was 18, now I'm 46 now, so this is a little bit of time ago. But when I was 18, I was a communist. It was, people like Emma Goldman who rescued me from that.
Yeah, let's start there, because I talked
Sure.
earlier about kind of a biographical
Yeah.
approach, try to do thread things. So there you're 18, you're idealized, you're
Mhm.
idealistic,
Mhm.
and you're seeing communism, and it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, my joke about communism and capitalism, that they're the best two economic systems that have never been tried.
Right.
And people don't get it. You get it because the state has always interfered.
Mhm.
So they both are great in theory. And
Mhm.
I just don't think, maybe you had some kind of a true capitalism in the early American history, possibly. But even
Yeah.
then, I'm not
Closer.
really, yeah. But so what was your upbringing like? Were your parents
Mhm.
Republicans, Democrats? What were they?
Well, what's funny is my dad. I actually think my dad was more of a in between, but he probably, because like he voted for Carter, talks about that he voted for Carter and those kinds of things. Um, he was a bit of an independent, if you will, but generally the policies he tends to agree with are conservative. He voted for Trump, and which never made any sense to me because he did it because he's a Christian, and I'm like, have you even looked at Trump? you know, but
Yeah, yeah.
but my
It's
mom
weird.
was a Democrat.
These contradictions are all over the place. Yeah.
Right, for sure. And but yeah, I was raised in a pretty typical home. My dad was not a caring man. He still isn't. He's alive today. My mom is passed away, and she was the opposite of that. My mom was a very caring individual, but it gave me a bit of a balance when it came to politics on looking at stuff, because my dad was constantly questioning any particular person who would be a politician. He would be like, okay, I'm scrutinizing whoever this is. My mom was more, I'm a Democrat, I'm gonna always vote Democrat, pull the lever. And and so that kind of gave me that dichotomy, which led me to become an anarchist. But in my early years, it led me to look, from, because I think most people that consider themselves left, I was similar. I wanted people to be okay. I cared about people, and that's something I got from my mother. She cared about people. She wanted people to be okay. She didn't mind that people were black or pink or purple. She didn't care if they were from China, if they were, whatever. She didn't care if they were gay. She didn't care any of that. And all she cared about was that people should love one another and be good to one another. And how she interpreted that was, how they should be good to one another is by, helping each other out. And most people that fall for the left, if you will, they have that kind of mentality. They want to help people, and they look and they see, oh, the left or communism or whatever leftist ideology they subscribe to, they want to help people too. And
I want to jump in and just agree with
sure.
that from my own testimony, because those are the values that I continue to bring with me as I get to appreciate and understand the conservative ideology, because I well understand the liberal ideology, and I
Hmm.
always just rejected the conservative ideology. So
Hmm.
then when I really understood what it meant, which, be honest with you, probably comes through things like home ownership, and
Hmm.
like when you come to lift yourself up, you realize you understood what they were saying all this time that you rejected. And then you see people that refuse to make changes in their life to better themselves, and they just want constant handouts. And
Correct.
I was on food stamps in Portland, Oregon for like 12 years,
Right.
because the state made it really comfortable for me to like live, frankly, an anarchist lifestyle.
Hmm.
Ironically, like I kind of
Hmm.
got to screw the state, take the money, and make it toward my own benefit. But then at the
Yeah.
same time, I was broke all 14
Hmm.
years, 13 years. Took some saving to get out of Dodge. But
For sure.
yeah, so like,
Yeah,
so
and
I
that's
still
definitely
bring
how it
that
works.
value of caring for people, but now I realize it's not from making sure that they're always, that they can't, that if you never learn from your lessons, then
Yeah.
you don't really care for that person, actually.
Right. And I think that from my perspective, what we miss a lot, and you'll hear this if anybody hasn't checked out our podcast, we're on YouTube, we're on Anchor, we're on everything. It, it's called Aquarian Anarchy. We look at that idea of stopping judging people based on whatever political ideology they subscribe to, because let's be clear, most people aren't what we call anarchs, which means that they realize that they're self-ruled and that they're the only real true ruler they have. But most people aren't there, and most people aren't the people in Washington D.C. that are ruling over people, that are controlling people's lives and trying to dominate the world. Most people aren't that. Most people that consider themselves either conservative or liberal or whatever title are just people trying to live their lives, and they come up with solutions, and whatever that solution may be, right or wrong, generally is either because it made sense, which is generally what the conservative side of things or the right side of things do. They think this is the logical way to attack this problem, and I break it down, and it makes sense economically in this way or that way. And on the left, they tend to be more like, oh, I want people to be okay. I don't want people to starve, and so they care about people. We shouldn't be attacking leftists. We shouldn't be attacking people on the right. We should be attacking the state, because they're the ones that take those good ideas, whether it be the economic idea of a conservative or the heartfelt emotions of a leftist, and they pervert it to control people, murder people, and take their shit. And that is what really shifted for me in my younger years and led me away from being your regular socialist communist. Was I started going, okay, but the state, they're the ones that screw all this stuff up. Now, I wouldn't have called it the state. I would have said, oh, these damn Republicans at that time.
Right.
And, but eventually I would say, wait a minute, the Democrats are doing that too.
Yeah.
And so
then it becomes the state. When you realize both sides are playing that game. And I knew that from the beginning. My first election was Al Gore and the Ralph Nader year.
Yeah.
And Nader was raising all these points. He was saying, so you're dealing with the same two sides of the same coin, and if you want an alternative, you're going to need a third party. And my parents even voted for Perot, but then I turned them into liberals. Now they're liberals. Now I'm like, wait, come back. Don't go back Republican. Just don't believe so much of this bullshit they're telling you. That's all.
Right.
But it's hard. You got to. I don't try to persuade people of things anymore.
And you can't. You cannot.
It's not worth it.
No, that's one of the other mistakes that a lot of people that are free thinkers, and that's actually probably the title that I prefer personally, as free thinker. Kind of to the definition that Aristotle made, thousands of years ago. The idea that you just think for yourself. You don't take anything anyone says as fact. Learn for yourself. Sure, learn from people, absolutely, but think for yourself. And anyone that starts thinking for themselves and gets out of the propaganda starts having these kinds of questions. Whether you're talking about from the left, like a Ralph Nader, who certainly added to political discourse his entire life. Ralph Nader, we never were successful. I reached out to Ralph Nader to cover Adam when I was working for him, because, he was a free thinker. He's somebody that thinks outside of the box that we're placed in. And so for me, I think that anybody that begins to question and whether it's coming from your heart or your head, doesn't matter. You start to question, and then you start to get answers, and it's those answers that matter.
When you were beginning to see the problems with the state and communism, what was your involvement? Was you an activist at that time?
No, you got to realize the activist in me, if you will, really started with Ron Paul much later. This is just me thinking, as an activist, the person who activated me really was Adam Kokesh. Because still with Ron Paul, and I got involved in his grassroots campaign here in Indiana, particularly Ron Paul in 2012. I was still pretty much, because I went, like, I did what you said not to do. I went from this far left communism all the way right after 9/11, scared the shit out of me. I went neocon, blow shit up and peace through war and all that nonsense. So I went the other direction. And but
that's when I got a bit radicalized myself toward the left.
Right.
When the left was still good, I liked all the principles of the left still. Now it's all screwed up. They like war. But at that time, we were anti-war, free speech.
Yeah.
And these were like two of the biggest pillars. And then just caring about people, but not making a huge identity politic out of it. It was pretty balanced left at that time. Now it's just wacko.
Yeah, but they're not left anymore.
Yeah,
this is all fascism.
Yeah,
every bit of what you're saying is fascism.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's in Joe Biden's hands or Donald Trump's hands. What you're saying is fascism. And to define terms, fascism is when you take the state and merge it with corporate power, when you merge it with business interests and act in concert in that way. And to be clear, this isn't in a direct quote, but that's the definition of fascism as presented by Mussolini, who everyone considers a fascist. So we're not talking about my definition. That's the basic definition that he had in place. It wasn't somebody who doesn't like black people. There are plenty of racists who are on the right or on the left. It doesn't matter. That exists on both sides. And that's not what fascism is. Fascism is the merger of that. And that's what we're seeing in every part of our life right now. I mean, where does Pfizer end and the government start?
It blows my mind.
Right.
It blows my mind.
Of course. And to be clear too, that's the worst of both worlds. But to kind of get back to the point of your question, what started me waking up really was, just religion. I started my religious journey when I was 9 years old. And from that, it led me to a variety of different religions. And
9 years old?
At 9.
What?
Really at that time, anything that I could get my hands on, because what had happened was I was a rebellious kid. This will just shock the hell out of people that have watched me. I've been a rebel all my life.
Troublemaking?
Absolutely, all the time.
Oh
yeah, for sure. And I was a metalhead, and to be clear, metalhead at my age at 9 years old means that I like Def Leppard. We're not talking about Metallica and Anthrax. No, that would come later. But we're talking about Def Leppard. We're talking about Motley Crue. We're talking about those kinds of music. Yeah. I was that kid in school, and I went to church with my parents. And I had long hair, I was wearing black, the whole shtick. And I was in church. Yeah, right. And I think that leads that way sometimes.
By then it was Nirvana, and then by the end of high school it was Korn.
Nice. That's similar, very similar, same energy.
Kind of similar, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, Def Leppard and Nirvana are two different kinds of music. I get that. But for a generation, the people that were listening to Motley Crue were the rebellious kids.
Yeah.
And same with Nirvana with Smells Like Teen Spirit, and by the way, loved it when it came out. I was like, oh, and then went and listened to their other stuff. I was like, it's okay. Because at that time I was a full blown, listening to the Metallica was too light for me. And, but
when did you find Deicide?
I actually, when I was 18, I did listen to Deicide, and it was because a friend of mine who, in my religious journey, who was in my first coven, because I at 18 became Wiccan, and the person who was in one of my first covens, his name was Corey, was like, we were trying to come up with magical names because it's something you do as a kid when you're becoming Wiccan, is you look at your name and then you make up a fancy name for yourself and do all this craziness. And one of the things he was like, I think deicide's a cool name. And I was like, that's the murder of God. And where you're trying to like find God in nature and the murder of God. And he was
Right.
like, yeah, but it sounds cool. And I was like, yeah, it does. So we found this, actually a band t-shirt at I think it was someplace in the mall. That was a deicide t-shirt. And he was like, I'm buying that motherfucker right now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so yeah, that's when I actually found deicide when I was the band when I was 18.
I think, yeah, I was probably like 22 or something.
Right. Yeah, they've been around for a long time. I don't even, to be honest with you, I've heard bits and pieces of deicide, but I've never actually listened to an entire song.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've listened to their few albums.
Really? That's funny.
It's not usually my aesthetic that I'm looking for, but occasionally I just need insane metal once in a while.
For sure, I get that.
And I don't like satanic imagery or stuff like that. But I accept Jesus, but I accept more than Jesus, and I don't go to any churches. Yeah. So this is speaking. So we're still on metal a little bit, and you have a symbol behind you that there's a metal band that uses that symbol. Do you know who?
I several do. I think Cradle of Filth does.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The heptagram, right?
Yeah, it's 7-pointed star. There are several that use that, but who are you thinking about?
Tool.
Well, I like
Tool. Okay, Tool has a lot of imagery. They seem to understand some mystical shit.
Yeah, they do. They directly. Kabbalah is one of their biggest influences.
Interesting. So what do you think the power of that symbol is, the heptagram? And
it's a lot. Yeah. That's actually a very, very deep question.
And they seem to practice sigil magic at every show. They hang it above the crowd. And some people are worried about that, especially in the conspiracy community. There's a whole lot of people nervous about every symbol that comes around. And I'm trying to be open-minded about it. And and I do actually believe that band's heart is in the right place and they're using it in the right place. And I believe you are too. But I think you can use any symbol toward evil or good.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, that symbol is you will find it everywhere in anything that I do. You will find a 7-pointed star, guarantee it. And then that is intentional, and it is symbolic, and it will make people scared. I'm telling you right now, if you dive into my spirituality, you will find yourself scared if you are a typical either Christian or Jew or maybe most Muslims. You're going to get scared by my spirituality. I guarantee it, because I don't shy away from things that people are scared of. And that's been my the outcome, if you will, of rebelling at 9 years old against the church. Is I started looking into religion of all kinds. And that led me to that symbol. Now, we, as I guess publicly, with Aquarian Anarchy, we've moved away from using the 7-pointed star because largely when Chad and Nico became involved with our podcast, Chad's a Catholic. I mean, he's a pretty traditional Catholic. He wanders off the reservation a little bit, but largely he's a regular Catholic. And Nico, I don't know really what I would describe Nico as. He's ventured into voodoo. He's ventured into other spiritualities.
He's young.
He is young, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, he's got some time to work it out.
For sure. I just call him a hotep, but and people can look up what that means for themselves. But for me, the 7-pointed star is a symbol of liberty. It's a symbol of freedom and the ultimate freedom and the ultimate liberty. And why it scares people is because it is founded, my understanding of it, it's a very old symbol. It's been used by a bunch of different cultures for a variety of different reasons, almost always to a high degree of a spiritual attainment in one way or another. For instance, it can symbolize the 7 planets. The number 7 is huge in almost any mystical revelation. I also want to back up just a second, because I tell people that you're going to get scared, and that is real. I really am telling you. You look into my
It's a
spirituality.
fair warning. It's like parental advisory.
Right. You come into my land. This is not for the faint of heart. It is not for everyone. What I do is investigate reality. And by investigating reality, reality has wild animals in it that want to kill you. And that exists both on the physical plane and on the spiritual plane. So you need to be ready for a lot of crap. All of that said, Jesus is one of my most influential influences on me. He is absolutely, I agree with Aleister Crowley when he said, you can argue whether Jesus was a person or not, but he most certainly was a God, because that is absolutely true. There is no doubt in my mind that one of the highest focuses of God energy is Jesus Christ. And that is an absolute truth for me. I have seen it with my own eyes. I have experienced it. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that if you devote yourself to the teachings of Jesus Christ, you will find enlightenment. That being said, I question everything. And for me, I needed something a little bigger, and I needed something a little deeper. And where I got that was in the writings of Aleister Crowley. And Crowley, who called himself the Beast 666, came to me in a dream at 18. Go ahead.
Have you gotten any pushback about talking about Aleister Crowley on Aquarian Anarchy, considering
Absolutely.
I would think so. There's a substantial Christian contingent, I think.
Absolutely. And none of them have read Crowley. The thing that people you'll find is that people that haven't read Crowley or wouldn't read Crowley are the ones that don't like him. They're the ones that say, "Oh, he was a devil worshiper." Obviously, you have read two things by Crowley, and to be clear, that's Liber Samek, and there is one chapter that is called "Of the Bloody Sacrifice," that is in a book called Magic, or book 4, by Crowley. They have read those two things. They have not put it in context. They do not look at, they didn't read the footnote. I want to break it down, because I do suggest that people, if they want to know about Crowley, read book 4. That's one of the best books that you can read about Crowley, and you will learn his philosophy thoroughly. In that chapter, he lays out how to kill a male child. He lays out how to sacrifice that child for your magical practice. What they miss is the footnote that says and to just give a little bit of context, this was Victorian England. He says in the comment, and this may be a quote, but it's definitely close. He says, sometimes when an adept introduces an idea in a clear and concise manner, he means something entirely different. And it was illegal to talk about sex in Victorian England. You could not do it. You could talk about killing folks, but you could not talk about sex. Killing a male child means expending sperm. It is absolute and direct sex magic. Everything that, if you understand that and you read the chapter of the bloody sacrifice, you learn that menstrual blood in sex magic is a powerful tool. You learn that sperm in sex magic is a powerful tool. This is the elixir of life that he's talking about. But most people don't read that. Most people don't see that. They don't put it into context and realize that there is only one chapter in the entire book called book 4 where he says something direct and right to the point, and it is of the bloody sacrifice. So everywhere else he goes around the stories. But back to, go ahead.
Well, my main concern is if somebody like yourself is devoted to or a believer in someone like Aleister Crowley,
Mm-hmm.
I'm more concerned about your actions in your life than Aleister Crowley's.
Correct.
Because you might even be compartmentalizing. I'm not saying you are or anything, right? And finding the good stuff and ignoring the pedophile or something, right?
Right. He was an ass. And I don't think I've seen
I do
evidence.
hear he was an asshole.
Right. I have people have
to say the least.
Right. People have accused him of being a pedophile. I don't actually think that that's an accurate. I don't see proof of that in his actual life. I haven't seen that. I haven't read everything that he put out, but I don't actually think that Crowley did anything with kids. He didn't do it with kids. He didn't have to. He had lots of other people that he was doing stuff with, male and female. He was a jack of all trades, and but I don't see any proof that he did diddle kids. And even if he did, you cannot. Everyone is flawed, and I would agree that that is an evil act. There is something that should never be done. Children should never be brought into any of these kinds of ideas. But that being said, I had a dream when I was probably about 18 and had started getting into Wicca. And when I say get into, you understand, I don't do anything half-assed. I'm practicing this shit daily. This. But at that time, I had a dream about Crowley, and what's funny is I dreamt an image I wasn't familiar with. I was used to the bald-headed guy, and there's an older picture of Crowley with hair, and he actually came to me in that guise, and I may have seen it somewhere, I don't know. But in that dream, he said to me in the dream, just because your path is not my path does not mean you can't learn from me. And that's been my guiding light throughout my studies as it relates to religion, is that just because somebody may have had some fucked up things that they did, most people do. If you look at most people now, I've not done a whole lot of bad shit in my life, but my early life, and we're talking about this time. I'm 18, trying to find God, doing all this stuff. I was a friggin' criminal. I was stealing stuff. I was absolutely, and I mean a full-on criminal. I mean, I did a lot of bad things.
What usually people associate with anarchist.
Right. What most people would, and I wasn't really an anarchist at that time.
You were thinking like a communist.
Right. Right.
You're taking the communism upon yourself.
Right, for sure. I certainly did. I took lots of stuff, and I was mean. I was vicious to people. I was violent. And the teachings of Aleister Crowley, if they did anything to me, they made me not violent.
Hey, we got a viewer.
Awesome.
I think that just happened.
Awesome. Well, welcome. So we did at that time. I that made an impact on me. I started looking at what symbols can mean and all of those kinds of things, and dove a little deeper. So to get back to the star. This star was used by Aleister Crowley in a particular way. There's a book called The Vision and the Voice, and in that, and it was Crowley's work. It documents Crowley's work with angelic magic, which is before I found voodoo, it was the number one influence on me, whether it's Kabbalistic, which is the Jewish mystical teachings, their angels, or a particular set of angels called Enochian. And this was his document of his experience working with what's called the Aethers, which is the growth within working with that system. You go from being just a normal person to the end of it being enlightened, and this was his work with that system, supposed to be the most powerful magical system in existence. And towards the end of this work, and this is 30 levels, long story short, 30 levels, and towards the end, I think it was the 14th level, there started being this influence by an entity that called itself, and it was particularly feminine energy, called Babylon, and directly linked to the biblical Babylon, though interpreted vastly different. Also, spelling is different, and in mystical circles, spelling is important. It's not Babylon; it would be Babalon, and that changes in the. She corrects Crowley in the thing and says, "No, I'm not Babylon with the Y. I'm Babylon with the A." And at the long story short, when you and this is going to be steeped, warning to people, this is going to be steeped in mystical symbolism. I'm going to try to break it down as quickly as I can and as best as I can. Long story short, at the top. Hey, and who you got is one of our best ones. This is Anarchitect Daryl, who is one of our fantastic anarchs in our anarch chat. So shout out back to him. So so at the end of the day, how it breaks down in Kabbalistic terms is that God has three faces, and Christianity knows this as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And mystically, through Kabbalistic ideas, that's the same, more or less. And the feminine portion of that would be the Holy Ghost. And that portion is ruled in Thelemic, which is the philosophy of Aleister Crowley's, by Babylon. And when you approach the understanding of God, and we're talking about, this would be like really getting the universe. When you approach that, the first approach you get is feminine. And in that idea, and this goes with Kabbalistic symbolism as well as Thelemic symbolism, the first thing you get is this feminine image. In Old Gnostic texts, it was called Sophia, which is wisdom. And when you approach it, she comes to you with a cup, and she says to you, if you drink of my cup, you must sacrifice everything you are. And when that means everything you are, that means everything you are. Every single thing that is you dies. And not just dies physically, dies spiritually, dies completely. Everything that is you, if you drink from her cup, is eliminated. It is all gone, every bit of it. And it is added to every other person who has come that way. Every person, from Jesus to Muhammad to Krishna to Sri Ramakrishna to Black Elk to whatever spiritual person has made it to a true understanding of what reality is. Everyone, you merge your consciousness with theirs in this stage. And in that, you lose everything that you are. And you also gain everything that is. You gain all things that are God, because you cannot be you and be God. You cannot be the person that you understand as who you are and become God. You must first understand everyone else who has come that way. You must understand where their perspective is, because in order to understand God, who is everything, you have got to embrace everything that is. And that's difficult. It's hard. And for many people, that's seen as evil, because some of these people, like for instance, from a Muslim point of view, many Muslims think that some of these Jews are evil. So you have to be able to see things from their point of view. So it frees you. Notice the word freedom. It frees you to become who you can be. Once you get to that point, you take your consciousness and it moves from that Star of Babylon to a symbol that you can't put down. It's not real. You move from what in Kabbalistic terms is called Binah, which means understanding, to Hokmah, which means wisdom. And that wisdom is when you take that consciousness that you have sacrificed, that you have given up, and you receive it back. You get that consciousness back, but it's added to. It has everyone else's. Now, you will never, in Kabbalistic terms, truly become God. Hokmah is the cloak, which is called Kether, the crown. You will have become Hokmah, which means wise. And that wisdom, that place where you have united all other paths, and understand none of this can be consciously communicated, none of it. So anyway, the reason that star is what I use is because that is my goal. I'm not there. I am not at the point where I have accepted that cup. I would, I think if it was offered, I'd take it right now.
There's
I haven't.
Pointing back, I mean, there's a lot that I wanted to say in the middle of that. You could unpack. Excuse me. See how backed up it all is? There's plenty that I wanted to get into throughout all that. And but that very last thing you said reminded me of a Tool video, since it kind of all came from that, where there's like a fruit, and the fruit goes from pentagram to pentagram to what is this, 6?
A hexagram.
Hexagram to a heptagram. And the seeds, they close up on the fruit, and the seeds change those shapes. Yeah. And I believe somebody eats it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know
And
the
then
video.
there's this amazing sequence of like
Mhm.
just complete oneness, and
Mhm.
I think that's what they're trying to convey.
Absolutely. And the pentagram, if you look at my shirt, the pentagram means people. When we were talking about earlier, the idea of my mind, my soul, the symbol for that is a pentagram. And when you have it, and people will use it upside down to mean that you're not quite enlightened yet.
Who
Supporting that.
Rush's 2112 has a pentagram on it.
Yep, for
He's
sure.
reaching up for the
And they were
pentagram.
occultists too.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were
Didn't know
also
that.
libertarians.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Re-examine the whole 2112 album set. What is it? 2112 Hemispheres, and and I think it's Farewell to the Kings.
It's Chad
Yeah, I told you,
doing
my
scary
brothers are
pentagram
cheating.
time.
Yeah, right, for sure. But in that series, if you go back and look at it through libertarian eyes, through anarchist eyes, it takes on a whole new life, because what they're doing is conquering the state. Yeah, they've gone from a totalitarian state that outlaws what kind of music that you can, that you can't have real music, because they believe that music will set the heart free. And you watch as they battle back, and that leads them to a mystical understanding eventually when it comes to the first side of the album Hemispheres. And by the way, Rush is one of my favorite bands, as
It
is
sounds
Tool.
like it.
Yeah. But and I learned a lot from them. But yes, the pentagram is and what they're, I think, this is just me, this isn't anything that they particularly said, but I think what they're trying to demonstrate in that picture where it shows the man walking into a pentagram is finding yourself. Aristotle said the true gateway, and I'm butchering the quote, but and yes, Adam Chad is right. They were anarchists, but I believe they are trying to convey walking into your true nature, knowing yourself. Like Aristotle said, the path to wisdom begins with knowledge of self. Knowing yourself is that first step. Across the old temples in Greece, they used to have written above it, "Know thyself." It's also what was written above the doors in the Hellfire Club, which is for conspiracy theorists going to go nuts. But the Hellfire Club was a like organized secret society that existed in the United States and also Britain during what we would call the Revolutionary War. Benjamin Franklin is a noted member of the Hellfire Club, but they also wrote above their temples.
And a Mason, right?
Yeah, and a Mason. And all of this is rooted in Masonic symbolism.
That's
yeah.
Crowley was a Mason, right?
Not really. He went through early on. He went through the initiations into several different Masonic organizations, but to call him a Mason, he wasn't active in that way. But many of the groups that he was a part of were esoteric Masonic groups. They were groups that were not officially Masonic. For instance, he joined at a young age, joined a group called the Golden Dawn, which is one of the most influential occult groups in history. And he definitely impacted it, because it was because of him that it fell apart. Crowley destroyed the Golden Dawn, to be clear. And they practice what people would call white magic. And to be clear, so do I. The thing, I don't do black magic, if you will, and that has racist overtones anyway. But what people would term, what people would term as black magic or doing evil things, I don't do that. I'm devoted to God. I'm trying to get to God in everything that I do, and part of that
dark arts is another way to put it, maybe.
Right. Dark arts would be a better way to describe what most people call as black magic.
I feel like I should reveal something about myself you probably don't know.
Sure.
But contributes to the conversation.
Sure.
And reveals also one reason I'm so distrustful of institutions. And I think we could link spirituality ultimately back to anarchy. But well, before I say that, I did know people before I reveal the big reveal, I just want to add that I knew people that practice white magic in Portland. There was quite a bit of that going on. And one of my best friends at the time, and still a good friend, we were just texting, does that kind of stuff. And they're good-hearted people. So I do have an open mind to the idea that it's possible. I think it's a dangerous path. I think you could fuck it up, and you can blow up your ego and things like that. But it can work. It's not mine. So my parents raised me in Santa Barbara, but they met at the big blue building in Los Angeles called Scientology. Your old buddy, Elron's old, Crowley's old buddy Elron, is what I'm trying to say. So there's a tie that you and I have.
Interesting. And through Scientology, no less.
Yes. And certainly we all are out. And I'm careful not to be too much of an SP against them, because I don't want any more, or
get sued.
Just say any retaliation.
Right.
I don't want to even accuse them of anything at this point. But I just don't talk about it.
Leave it to me. I will.
That's fine. Yeah, I think it's best for me not to talk about any of my personal experiences with the church, except where it contributes to my position is that it's a cult, and it's protected by the state, and a lot of cults are, and although I value freedom of religion, which you need the state to protect on some level too, at least currently we do. It's also a dangerous precedent to give that kind of protection. So it's a weird place. And obviously actually, I'm going to go this way. Then I got into Krishnamurti at age like 18, 19.
Yeah.
And he came out of the Theosophy movement and was raised to be their messiah. And
interesting guy.
And at some point turns out he died like around the time I was born, and he was just in Ojai, a few miles from Santa Barbara, where I grew up. And I didn't know about him until like I was pretty much already over Scientology, but I needed somebody to look up to that did something courageous. Like, it seems to me that it's legit that he was involved with that Theosophy, was like, okay, I need out. I'm going to collect my money, see what I can scrounge out of this.
He's grifting.
Yeah, he grifted.
Yeah.
Respect that. And then he got out. And then he never talked about it. He just said, don't trust churches, don't trust governments, blah, blah, blah. And basically kept that message straight, and essentially didn't look back on his past. And that's kind of what I did. And it took well over a decade to begin to learn about the sex magic rituals Elron did and stuff like that. It's really interesting. So that's where I'm coming from, and I do worry about anybody. It's like, oh, I follow Aleister Crowley.
For sure. And I wouldn't say that I follow Aleister Crowley. I am influenced by Aleister Crowley, and I would also say that he influences me more than most anyone. I practice a version, what I call voluntary voodoo, which is an acceptance. I want to kind of back up, I guess, and try to define terms. To me, all religions, it doesn't matter which religion we're talking about, whether we're talking about Christianity or Jewish religion or Hinduism or any of these weird religions we're talking about now, or voodoo or any of the religions, ultimately the symbols really do break down to be the same. Most people are looking for the same thing. They're trying to get at what in magical circles we call looking for God, uniting with God, or connecting to that God or Christ consciousness or whatever it is. And most people are looking for that unio mystica, or union with God. And what happens is that people are flawed. God is not flawed. People are flawed. And when that message that might come to someone through their consciousness, our consciousness is not just logic and and understanding and facts and those. It's also feeling and emotion and all of those kinds of things. So trying to, if you get some kind of communication from what I would define God as being all things, a consciousness within all things, if you're receiving that, you are not capable, beyond the fact of want and your upbringing and all of that stuff. You are not capable of sharing the your understanding that was given to you by God with other people. You can't. You cannot do it. It is impossible, because there's no way to convey it in the language that anyone speaks. There's no way to do it. You cannot define God because it is undefinable. And so for us, we choose what works best for us, and for a Christian who has been brought up, for instance, in a particular church, and they've been given this symbol set that guides them to God. And there's a Hindu saint called Sri Ramakrishna, who he achieved a enlightenment through worshiping Kali, which is a Hindu god. And then once he did that, he went, oh, cool, this is neat. I bet I can do this with other religions. And did it through Islam, did it through Christianity, and practiced those religions to get to God, and got the similar enlightenment through doing that.
I do believe that the teachings, the core teachings that are literature, not all of it, but I think a great deal of that sacred literature is legit, the truth,
For sure.
and will teach you. And you can, I went the direction of Buddhism after Scientology, and that was always my adult choice. I was never an adult practicing that other thing. But I went the direction of Buddhism. But then I did have a religious experience last year, and I understood Christ to be my savior, our savior, the whole world's savior. But at the same time, I still relate to Buddha as the teacher.
Right.
To me, he's the great teacher.
Yeah.
And because Christ has got his line of work, Buddha's got his line of work.
Correct. That's a great way to look at it too. And for me, why it led me to voodoo is I had a friend, very long story short, who introduced me to voodoo. And within voodoo, you get to talk directly. It's different. Like when you go, and there's nothing wrong with any of these religions that I'm going to mention, and they all work. It's just my personal needs. I need to talk to God. I need to have a conversation. We need to have a one-on-one.
You could have a direct line. That'd be the shit.
Right. And you can with voodoo. And now these are just faces of God. And in voodoo, what they teach you is that everything that is Legba. And Legba is the closest thing to what most people would define as God within the voodoo pantheon. He is everything. It is said within voodoo that all things other than Legba are just stories that Legba has told. So that includes the rocks, that includes you, that includes me, but it also includes Isis from Egypt, it includes Jesus, it includes Muhammad, it includes all of these people, and all of these things are just one of Legba's stories. So for me, I was able, through voodoo and banging on some drums and inducing a trance state, was able to communicate directly, like you and I are talking, with, and this is from somebody at that time who had experienced archangels. And I mean experience. I have seen and experienced archangels, multiple ones. That has happened in my life. That is real. You cannot believe me. I don't care.
I want to know exactly what that means. What does that literally mean?
What that literally means is there are, and you can go find the formulas, and Crowley lays them out in book 4 in Magic as well. But there are dozens of different ways to do that. There's a ceremonial technique, the ceremonial magical technique called Evocation, where you call an entity, whether it be an angel, a demon, whatever the entity is, into physical manifestation in front of you, and you speak with them. The problem with that is it is all, you're never going to, never's a big word. Only once in my life have I communicated verbally with an archangel, and directly in that manner, one time. And it was the most blow me away kind of spirituality experience I've ever had. Very long story. But with evocation, you call them into what's called a magical triangle. They appear before you, and people are, oh, I've done that, and all I got was some smoke. Then you didn't do it right. I'm sorry. Expect to see something there. Now, it might be your mind's eye, but you will have no doubt that they're there. You will know there will be
That
a
freaks me
physical
out.
presence.
I'm not. It's not everybody's path. It freaks me out.
No, it is not. It is not. And it's hard. You're not going to do this stuff. People think, oh, I'm just going to go down, draw a circle on the floor, and I'm going to throw this triangle over in the corner, and I'm going to say ooga booga, and they're going to show up and do that. It does not work that way. You're going to have to be doing some stuff for years before you get any, and I'm talking every day, before you get any of this. When I say I practice it, I practice it. I do it every day. There is not a day that I don't do something.
Well, I don't have a question lined up.
Okay.
First time I wasn't ready.
So just to kind of finish that up, but even in that state, when you call an angel, you're not physically, like, it's different. Like you and I talking isn't what you get. You get like psychic impressions, you get imagery, sometimes you get words, but it's all in your mind, every bit of it. It's not a mouth talking and an ear hearing. With voodoo, you get a mouth talking and an ear hearing. And often with voodoo, they know stuff that you did not know. If you know, like it has literally happened where they're like, go here, get this, and you'll get this. And you walk over, you get that thing where they said it was. And so that happens, and it's real. And for me, that was huge. I like proof. And so when the Loa, which is the voodoo gods, started communicating with me, and this is, to be clear, like 15 years ago, when I started working with voodoo, I found for me that was the what I needed, what my personality needed to be that connection with God. I needed to sit down with somebody who doesn't come in a bright white robe and big ass wings and you know, all that kind of stuff. No, it makes more sense to me to sit down, and this is a description of Legba, with an old black dude who is smoking a cigar, got a fedora on, kicking back and being like, quit being a dumbass, you're doing this shit wrong, stop doing that. Or you know, he talks very normal, he talks very just conversationally, and I needed that. And for me, that works best as my connection to God, to sit down and just bullshit with God. And so, because that's what I need, that's what I focus on. Now, philosophically, I don't fit. Like what people think that you are supposed to believe in, I don't fit that. Really, psychologically, I'm a deist. And for me, you know, God is unknowable.
What is the significance of his cigar?
There's a lot to that. The significance of Legba's cigar can
That's
be
Daryl's question, by the way.
Yeah, I know. And but the significance of a cigar can be a manyfold. One, it just so happens that the imagery of Legba comes down with that, but it can also be the fire of life. And he turns, because you can find all four elements in everything that, and I'm talking about earth, air, fire, and water, in everything that you do. And the cigar is the masculine side of that. The cigar can be air because of your breathing and all of that kind of stuff. And it's also used as a tool to blow blessings, air blessings with the cigar, but it also is fire, which is also a masculine form. And you find the feminine form largely in things like the fact that Legba does walk with a cane, because in the message behind that is that no matter how perfect you think your view of God is, it's flawed. No matter what, if you think that God is this or that or the other thing, you are wrong in some way. And in voodoo, they express that with the highest God that is the most powerful, the most venerated deity in that system. And to be clear, every other deity is just another story that he told. He is flawed. He walks with a cane. He's an old man. And so all of those things are important, but the cigar would be just blessing, and it's kind of an herbal thing. Reminds me a lot also of sage and Native American stuff. In voodoo, they used, and particularly in Haiti, but it also translates when it comes over to New Orleans, and many other southern states, but New Orleans is probably the most famous. They used what they had because they weren't allowed to have, incense or had big smudge sticks. They couldn't do that. They couldn't have that kind of symbolism. So they used cigars because they had them. They were allowed to use them, so they made them sacred.
Interesting. Okay, I want to ask you a conspiratorial question.
Sure.
Speculate. I want to speculate on. Okay, it's like speaking to the contradiction of religion, religious leaders. Mm-hmm. Somebody like Crowley, who it's questionable his character. Mm-hmm. And we know what we know is that he was a dickhead,
he was a
right?
dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there could have been something even darker and say, okay, then there's like L. Ron. What was is it true that Crowley said, even Crowley was like, watch out for that L. Ron Hubbard guy? Like,
I don't.
Did they have a feud? Did they have a feud and split up? Because I feel like my theory is that L. Ron believed honestly that he had come up with some kind of scientific approach to capture magic and shit. Yeah. And really believed in what he was doing. I think the guy running it today doesn't really believe it. And now he's just taking that money and working with it, right?
For sure.
Grifting like a maniac.
Right. And with L. Ron Hubbard, and to be clear, I'm not an expert on L. Ron Hubbard. I don't know everything that I've never been into Scientology, and largely
conspiracy is another aspect. You might be into those kinds of
conspiracy stuff. Theory. Yeah. I can get into, but
they definitely play into all of it,
Sure, and they do. But I guess I need to tell a story, and I'll try to make it as quick as I can, because it isn't actually Crowley that really impacts L. Ron Hubbard. It is Jack Parsons.
Jack Parsons, baby. But they hung out with Crowley, all of them.
Yes, they did. And Jack Parsons, for people that don't know, was the person responsible for putting us on the moon. He was
the Nazi.
Yeah. Well,
he's Jet Propulsion Lab.
Correct.
And then the Nazi guy, von Braun.
Correct.
So yeah, we are living in a fascist world. To me, it's quite obvious.
Correct.
Because of
I agree.
Operation Paperclip, so on. But that's
100% with you.
I got to remember, we are on YouTube, and I don't want to lose my channel. I'm just getting it going again.
Right, and so you had me on.
Yeah,
just to be clear.
Just throwing the dice.
But very short story. L. Ron Hubbard was friends with Jack Parsons. Both of them were Thelemites. This is after Crowley's death, and Jack Parsons decided. We talked about Babylon. He decided he wanted to make that energy that is Babylon, that is the transformative, liberating energy of the universe, the what sets you free. Because remember, real freedom exists within the body of God. So the first real step towards that is Babylon, taking that cup. He decided that he wanted to make that manifest, that he wanted to bring the energy of Babylon to the physical world, what the Gnostics would call Sophia Pistis, or the descension or descending of the feminine godhead into the world. And he decided he wanted to make that a reality. When you, in mystical terms, when you become enlightened, when you truly unite yourself with God, which is what Babylon provides, when you do that, there are really only three possible outcomes. One, you stay here and you're crazy. You just lose your damn mind. And because you cannot communicate what you have learned, and trying to communicate with yourself makes you, and you just go off and, I don't know, lick trees or something. So you're done. Your brain is fried. That's one possibility. Second one is you realize reality. and you realize and you internalize it, and you become one with God. Generally, not always, sometimes they some of those people that go through that kind of seem like they are crazy, because they usually become catatonic, or they lose their connection to the physical realm. It doesn't always happen, and many people have argued that happened to Crowley, and that you can see a disconnection and a change at a particular time. But long story short, you basically die, and that is the second thing that happens. Is usually you die. You can become catatonic because your mind is now gone. What would be your soul is now united with God, so it's no longer inhabiting your body. Usually the body dies when its soul is gone. So that one thing that happens is you die, you join God, and you go off to do that. The third thing is you fail. The third thing is that you do not unite with God. You attempt to unite with God and you fail. And when you fail, you become what is called a babe of the abyss, or you become a black brother. You become someone who could not relieve themselves of their ego. And so they become completely and totally dedicated to it. And that complete and total dedication to your ego and to your physical being makes you an evil, bad person. So your choices are dying, going nuts, or blowing, or becoming evil at that point. So let's use some examples through history. Jesus died on a cross. He died. He went up to heaven. He joined with God. He was a success story. So Jesus did her. And that's why I say you should follow Jesus. Jesus knows the path. He knows how to get you there. He's got it. He knows that way. And if you can do shit that he did, great way to do that. That is awesome. I personally guide myself by the Sermon on the Mount out of the Bible. That is the personal guide that I use for myself to achieve Unio Mystica. So that's me. But look at other people. Look at people who decided to found religions and come back with the truth. Voltaire said that we should value or praise those who seek truth, and we should fear those who find it, because most of the time they have become black brothers. The crazy people we're generally not going to know about. Anyhow, long story short, three men and a woman walked into a desert. I don't remember. It might have been Utah. It was out west somewhere. It might have been in California. One of them was Jack Parsons. One of them we don't know, and I can't remember his name, and nobody recognizes him at all. I don't remember who that was, because usually the crazy ones just go away. And the other male, and the female was Marjorie Cameron, but the other male that went out was L. Ron Hubbard. And so out of the desert came three people, and Marjorie Cameron was just the vessel, or the person that supposedly became possessed by the energy of Babylon when they were trying to manifest her. Anyhow, so she was not aware. She is not. Don't use her as an example of one of the outcomes, because I don't believe that she participated. But the other three did. One of them went nuts and went away. L. Ron Hubbard started a religion, and Jack Parsons spontaneously combusted in his laboratory. Look it up.
No shit.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, he was in a jet lab.
Right. There was no combustible materials in his lab.
Right. That's wild
Look it
stuff.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I will.
So
I didn't know that.
So for me, I believe that L. Ron Hubbard came out of there as a black brother. And I do believe that he has influenced people, particularly in government, because most black brothers, people want to make these Satanists out to be, and I believe Satanists are a thing. People that are Satan is the enemy. He is the enemy of mankind. He is the adversary. That's the energy that Satan is. And there are people that worship that. It doesn't do any damn good for a bunch of people in the middle of the woods somewhere to sacrifice some cat or something. They're not doing anything. They're just being silly teenagers or whatever the hell they're doing, trying to be dark metalheads or something. That's all they're doing. The real black brothers take over shit and become forceful dictators. like Joe Biden, and they tend to lose their mind. They become people like Donald Trump. They become people like the heads of any number of Rockefellers. They become the controlling interest of both government and corporations.
Yeah, I think that there was some dichotomies that that's the wrong word. There are dualities. There's dualities that I've come to accept, and they're really like control is evil, freedom is good. It's very simple. Somebody who's trying to control you a lot for sure is evil.
Yep.
And the person who wants to love you by giving you your freedom, that's it. They love you. They care about you more than the person who wants to control you for your own good.
Right.
These things are so simple to me now, and I feel like that does come with a spiritual awakening. And then the less you realize that you can rely on the state, maybe it ties to the difference between belief and knowledge. You had to believe. It seems to me that you absolutely view your experience with magic and whatnot, voodoo, to be knowledge. But in the beginning, you certainly had to believe it.
Have belief, correct.
And I think that the big danger is when beliefs become permanent. Something that you can't verify or know, but you believe in it.
Correct.
And so that's the danger and the misconception of a spiritual faith, a religious faith. If you're just belonging to a church, you can go ahead and believe all day. You'll never have any direct experience. I'm not saying you can't, but in fact, it was Catholic ritual. One of the things that touched me was a Catholic funeral ritual. I was like, whoa, this is some real shit. Some old school shit.
For sure. Catholics got it right a lot.
And yeah, that's what my mother was raised. She's still with us. Lost my grandfather. That's another story. I'll hold that. That is a story, but I'm going to hold it. Nice. So I forget what my train of thought was.
You were talking about freedom being
control. Yeah.
Freedom is the lack of control.
So yes, right. So I was trying to finally loop skillfully, and I blew it.
All good.
The spiritual talk with anarchism and government, because it seems to me that it becomes the obvious choice, a more free,
for sure, government
once you get past those weird contradictions where you think control is good and power is benevolent, and these things that are bizarre, really Orwellian beliefs.
Yeah. One of the things that I think people miss when looking at anarchism, in particular, because anarchism really cannot be divided into left and right. It really can't when you break it down. And you can see that really well in Voltaire de Cleyre's expressions of anarchism, which would be, by modern standards, considered from the left. In that, she allows for that capitalism will fail, and so will socialism, for different reasons, but they will fail. And the thing that makes them fail is state control. And so anarchism, by its nature, each of us, again, have a predilection towards a particular way of doing something. What an anarchist does is many people wrongly assume we don't like organization, and wrongly assume we don't like government. We don't like force. We don't like aggression. We don't like those sorts of things. If 10 people come together and decide to pool their money, which would be socialism, right? And 10 people decide to get together and pool their money voluntarily, that might be considered government, but it's voluntary. And most anarchists, regardless of what kind of anarchists they are, and I decline any of the titles, they just want to make decisions on their own. What anarchists don't believe in is rulership. We don't believe that other people own other human beings. We don't believe that it is possible for another person to know what is best for you. Now, they may be able to help you, and you might be able to work together, and that might, under what John Locke would have defined as being able to cede a piece of whatever responsibility your town has to somebody to pick up garbage or to handle the economic collective, if you will. All of that's real. When it becomes dangerous and not anarchistic is when you can't secede, when you can't leave because you disagree with the group.
Yeah, and that's an actual reality with health vaccine passports right now.
For sure.
This is becoming a reality.
You're not one to get your stuff shut down.
Punch passports.
Right.
Yeah. It's.
Don't worry, we face this every week.
Yeah. Those are the key words. Got to watch out for.
Right.
Yeah, man, it's a reality, and that's what's scary right now, and I guess that's why I actually felt like just shouting in my face, like you're not living your purpose. You need to be getting on a fucking microphone again.
Good.
And I don't know if that's true. Hopefully, it's not just ego, but I have gone through some pretty massive ego death experiences the last couple of years, and I think that it's actually scarier to do this than to just keep working and focusing on, scraping a couple $100 more bucks into the, just trying to piecemeal. And that's all good. That's what we have to do. I'm all for financial. I'm like kind of becoming almost a financial advocate for my friends. Like, you need to save your money and invest that shit. Get on Bitcoin and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But really there's a way to, I think that if you forget about scarcity, this is, I'm not speaking from experience. This is aspirational thinking.
Right.
If you do get away from, stop believing in scarcity, stop believing in anything but abundance, and then live like that, and then really believe in the purpose that's God-given, that you have. And I think that actually, if you don't, you will be stripped from this earth. If you ignore your purpose, you'll just be taken away. But if you are faithful to your purpose, you'll be protected. That seems to be the truth.
Yeah.
Your purpose might be to die. It might be your destiny. But I get that then goes to fearlessness. If you cannot, I think fear is very much generated out of ego. Absolutely. Because that's the thing that's protecting itself. Yeah, the ego, or just ego. I don't know. It seems as if maybe this is actually, a friend of mine got me thinking like this. It's ego is a field. Mm-hmm. It's not even your personal ego. It's almost like a collective. I guess Jung talks like that.
He does.
So there's a lot to learn.
Sure, and that's why you'll find that as we get more and more free as a society, and to be clear, we're not there today. You're going to see the merging. I'm seeing it now, and our show actually kind of synthesizes a lot of that. You'll see people that think, and this also happened in the 1770s, people like Thomas Jefferson or Thomas Paine or any of we're also thinking radically religiously. You'll find people that not only are thinking radically as it relates to politics, but also to religion. And what you're experiencing is definitely that urge to find your way. And for me, the hard part for me egotistically was to accept, and I struggle with this every day. To be clear, I still, you'll know when I've gone past that, because remember, I'm going to either blow up, I'm gonna, or something like that. So
just heads up, when Marcus spontaneously combusts in the middle of the podcast.
I start telling people, hey, I found the way, I not only did I fail, but I became a black brother. So if I'm telling you this is the only way, I'm wrong and I have made a mistake. But I don't foresee that happening anytime soon because
Yeah, I hope not.
I'm very flawed and I haven't perfected myself to that level to where I can approach really the throne of heaven at all. I hope to one day. But at the end of the day, we have to follow our dreams. The thing that makes people, frankly, like you and me, dangerous for the powers that be, is that we understand this is temporary. This world is not permanent. And because it is not permanent, even if the atheists are right and this is it, wouldn't you want to make the best of this? Wouldn't you want to try to do your very best? If this is your only shot at doing something, don't you want that to be an existence filled with love? Don't you want that to be an existence filled with compassion where you have helped other people and not hurt them? To me, transcendent truth is about uniting with God, no matter what that looks like, even if that looks like science, even if what you are doing is just analyzing the living crap out of every molecule and finding truth in that is a religious path. So as we move towards that unification, I have faith in the individual. I have faith that people will be like you and will start finding their way. But where I find challenge is, what if the only thing I was supposed to do, what if several months ago, Chad was having a crisis with faith. And instead, and this is one of my proudest moments of myself. At that moment, he was having a crisis of faith and worried about his Catholic upbringing. I've been instructed by the spirits that I work with to not approach other people from my perspective. I should approach them from theirs, because their symbol set to God is their symbol set to God. So I told Chad basically to double down and not let them take away his rituals, not let them take away his God, because some government mandate said that some priest has to say this or has to not say that he should
Which,
find
by
his
the
own
way, can I just add, when
Sure.
it comes to the punch passes,
Yeah.
the idea that
Yeah.
you are relegating your authority to
Right.
even a church,
Right.
I find unacceptable.
Absolutely.
Hey, take any loophole you can get at your work, do it.
For sure.
But I shouldn't have to go to a church to
Right.
to say that I have autonomy, and that's a religious experience
Correct.
that I have every day.
Right.
It pisses me off.
Absolutely. And we'll return to that just in a moment. But I
Yeah.
want to finish this point. For me, that was one of my proudest things that I've done, is to help him. What if that was all I was supposed to do? What if my purpose in life, now I don't actually believe that's true. I think my purpose has more to do with raising my kids. But what if the entire reason I was here and have had the experiences I've had was to help Chad in that moment of his weakness, to help him to become strong again? What if that was my purpose, and something he does leads to the freeing of the world? We have to be able to back out and say sometimes, and there's a New Age philosopher called Carolyn Mace who talks about this extensively. And she says, sometimes you were just supposed to be the you where you are. That's it. That's it. That's all you're doing, is being your energy where you are. So maybe this podcast, this conversation is what needed to happen for the world to be free. And to back to the punches, if you will, I think that if you chose to get that, that is on you, and that is your decision to make.
I respect everybody's decision in that respect.
Correct.
I will never tell anybody.
Right. But the idea that, and Ron Paul covered this as well, the idea that a government can come in and tell you what you can put in your veins, even if everything they're telling you is true.
Even if it's vitamins.
Right. Even if
they're coming at me with vitamin C, I'm going to be like, I'm not sure if I trust that vitamin C.
Right. Even if this sickness that is going around is the most dangerous thing in the world, and we need to all, if without it we're all going to die. Okay, all that, the punch is the savior of mankind. All of that's true, let's say. All right, even if that is true, it opens the door for government to be able to put things that are not, and government does that. If you study government for a moment, and I'm talking about American government, I'm not talking about people overseas. The American government has absolutely brutalized people, from the Native Americans to Black people in Tuskegee, where they injected syphilis.
Placebo. They
Yeah,
injected syphilis?
they injected syphilis
I thought they
into
just
a Black population.
okay. The official mainstream news always paints it
Right.
like this: they had syphilis. They refused. They gave them
They
placebo.
injected it. No, they injected
Oh
syphilis
shit!
into them. Look it up. And so, even if what they're talking about is good, we do not give them this power.
Dude, they gave us monkey viruses in the polio vaccine in the '60s, man. Robert F. Kennedy's whole Jr.'s whole vaccine, like, thing starts from like that, I think.
Right. Yeah, this is not what we do. And the reason is simple. The reason is because we have been given warnings through every spiritual text. The one that is the most famous is Revelation in the Bible. You cannot buy or sell things if you take the mark of the beast. I will not take the mark of the beast. And if this is the trial run for the mark of the beast, it is time for me to say no now. If you have taken the jab and they continue to push more and more jabs on you, it is time to say no, because if this is not the mark of the beast, it certainly can lead there.
So, like I said earlier, I don't go out of my way anymore, at least, to try to persuade people of anything, except for I did my parents. I really was like, listen, watch out for this, the third dose, because that's just leading you down the road of endless. It took some, like, now that I made my parents liberals, so now they're in the cult of liberal. They're actually Unitarian church members, which is basically a leftist cult. Very nice people.
To be clear, I was kicked out of a Unitarian Universalist church at one time. Not kidding.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think we did skip over some of your the history, but there can be other talks.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of, there's a lot of well-intentioned, lovely, spiritually inclined people, especially at the Unitarian Church, because they welcome atheists. They almost apologize when they talk about God, which is kind of weird. It's weird to be sitting in church and go, sorry to talk about God, but like,
Right.
So it's a very welcoming environment. But then I think that there's a spiritual, what's broken, that it breaks our political system too, is that real lack of understanding about control and power. If you understand the dynamics of control and power, even if you believe in somebody like Barack Obama, a lot of people were willing to give him Bush powers, right?
Right.
We wanted to take it away from Bush, but just give that power right to somebody else that we trusted. And a lot of people did, and I kind of went for a while. And
lots of people did.
He's a good grifter,
for sure.
So, if you really understand the nature of power, it doesn't matter who has it, and that's what I was told in goddamn high school civics. Is the famous phrase: "Power corrupts." Absolutely, my friend, what my friend Shane would say: "Power corrupts, absolutely, or your money back."
Right.
So
because he's right.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just seems to be until that like spiritual patch is made that people understand the dynamics of power and understand the control. There's no good excuse for control. I think we're going to be in this problem for indefinitely, Yeah. And I don't know. Some people believe there's like an awakening moment happening.
Sure.
I don't know. There's always, I do believe we're in a special time. it's difficult, but I would also rather be in my position than
Better in my time on their children's.
Yeah, a lot of my ancestors, or
Mhm.
then I have ancestors who probably had it better off, like my ancestors who were pioneering the hills of Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
I think had some freedom,
Lots of people
and
back in those days.
and they might have had a better life, even though it was a little tougher.
Mhm.
But then, when I really just being born now, it's like
Mhm.
there's so little suffering I really have to go through. It's almost all mental anguish. There's very little
Yep.
physical suffering I have to deal with.
Correct.
And I'll put myself through physical suffering just to save money sometimes,
Mhm.
but I still have that money. I could get the motel room instead I'll sleep in the car. It kind of sucks, but I could get it. And it's like,
Right.
it's like I choose suffering sometimes.
Well, what it comes
And
down to is power itself isn't bad, but you shouldn't cede your power. The thing is, in life, there are three things, in my view, that we should be aspiring towards, and that is love, knowledge, and power. And the power is essential, because without having your own power to do things, what use is your knowledge or love? If you don't have the power to share love, if you don't have the power to share knowledge, what could you do with it? What could, even because you couldn't even share it with yourself. So power is important.
right, power is in itself not, again, like so many things in itself isn't
Correct.
evil. Control really is. But then you can control in benevolent ways at times, but it has to be temporary.
Right. And that's why I like the term that we came up with, because people were like, are you guys anarcho-capitalist? Are you mutualist? Are you this or that? And I like the term anarch. It makes sense. I rule myself. I am in charge of me. Now, I'm not really an anarchist. An anarchist is someone who practices anarchy. I live in a state. I live in a town. I am impacted by government mandates every time I purchase something. So I do not live in a full anarchist society, because I am impacted by government control, at least in my pocketbook, on a daily basis. What makes me an anarch is that I deny that. Yes, it's unavoidable. If I want to get someplace, I'm going to pay taxes, because if I want to go get gasoline to put in my car so I can go anywhere, that's already figured into the price of gas. So I can't get away from the government impact on that, but I can lessen how it involves my life. My life, I rule myself. I do what I want. I'm like Cartman. I do what I want. I am not going to let some bureaucrat tell me what I can and cannot do. And I just don't. And one of the things for instance, we had Jeff Charles on, who's a conservative commentator, wonderful person. People should go check out that episode. We talked about secession. But one of the things that I said is, if they make it impossible through these jabs for me to support my family, I most certainly will go to Walmart and steal everything I can from the shelves, because they have made it impossible for me to supply my family with freedom. I will not be ruled. I will not be held down. Now, don't get me wrong. The first thing I'm going to do at Walmart, I was in Walmart yesterday. One of the first things I'm going to do is offer to pay. The first thing I'm going to do is say, here's a little bit of my hard-earned money that I worked my ass off for the thing that I want to get. And I'm going to try to give them that money. But if they tell me, just because I don't have a particular piece of paperwork, that I'm not allowed to have that thing, they can go fuck themselves, and I'll take it, because I am not ruled. Now, does that make me a bad person? You're going to have to judge that yourself. I don't judge you, and it's up to you to judge me.
My early years of exposure to anarchy is when I started like shoplifting. It's like, okay, let's test the rules.
To be clear, that's not real anarchy.
Yes, exactly. It was like I was my first exposure was Crime Think books. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I think I do. I think I know
it's a more like
about.
Punk rock version of anarchy, where it's like, and I guess in a way, I'm still, like I still have those lefty values, and I guess I self-brand as an anarcho-socialist, because I believe that if you really run the thought experiment out,
Mhm.
once you abandon the state, there's going to be a bunch of people standing around electing leaders, right?
Right.
And then you're going to have another state. So I just feel like it comes organically anyway. So really, it's about practicing the values of anarcho values, where you draw the power, you decentralize the power as much as
Absolutely.
Bitcoin people.
Mhm.
And that's I was thinking of like names for the podcast that I hope evolves out of these live streams, and one of them was only nodes,
Hmm.
because I
I
was
like it.
thinking of like the decentralized media as like every
Mhm.
individual is sort of like a node,
Mhm.
because we're all sort of conveying the truth. Our intention is to get the real information, to get the real narrative and everything. So like a Bitcoin node, we're all kind of on in our own way
Sure.
writing the record down,
I like it.
and it's widely decentralized. I probably won't use that title, but
I like it.
that's who I want to interview, people who are in the decentralized media.
Yeah.
And that could include artists, musicians who are putting out their own records,
Mhm.
and from all walks of life,
Right.
whether they're socialists or anarchists. For me,
Right.
the anarcho-socialist that believes that really we need to be, cities used to be, the city of Philadelphia, the city had like 6 townships,
Mhm.
and now and if you have an individual mayor, individual courts in all these townships, I believe you can process criminals faster, you can process cases faster, you can get faster reactions from law enforcement.
Mhm.
You need law enforcement, because somebody has to protect my property. I'm
Mhm.
going to protect my property, but then at the same time, I need a court to protect my property. I don't see how to get around it. I just see the importance of drawing the power out, decentralizing it back into the community, so it's actually like town halls that dictate the policy of the community. Do we
Mhm.
want to wear masks? The town hall can come together and say, no, we're not going to wear masks.
Yeah.
We're not going to do this and that. And these issues can be settled like they used to in
Right.
that way.
What you're talking about is localization. That was the fundamental core of what Adam's campaign was about. It was about returning power to communities, and an anarchist society, in my view, is best, I guess, organized, if you will, at the local level. And you're seeing lots of people. Sonny Johnson is a good example on the conservative side of things, of people that are moving in that direction as well. You're seeing people realizing that the smaller the group, the more the better it is to run a society at that level. I think Adam was absolutely correct that the best level to have a society is about the county level, because it's small enough to where you're really not dealing with people of different cultures. The people are going to be ultimately about the same, and you're also dealing with it large enough to where you're not just running your family, and so society, in my view, should be localized. And to your point, for one, I would advise that you look into with the anarcho socialistish stuff. Benjamin Tucker is a really good author on that, as is Voltairine de Cleyre, but also Emma Goldman. She influenced me massively in that way. But I would also say that the smart thing to do is to temper that with Murray Rothbard. And the reason is because he would be considered an anarcho-capitalist. And a lot of his ideas can function in a socialist society, because my belief is that all of these anarcho this and that's work only at a different scale. For me personally, how I would run my community in an anarchist society would be much more of what is commonly known as a mutualist, which is everyone working together in mutual aid. It's not pure socialism where like everybody puts the same amount into the pot. If the town needs apples and you make apples, they may need more apples than they need screwdrivers or something like that somebody else makes. So it's not, I have one screwdriver, you have one apple, let's share those. It's to whatever is needed for that society. So in my local area, I would be more inclined to have a mutualist society. But I think that when you start talking about communities, and go up a scale when you have that community that's county level trying to coordinate with another community that is county level, I think the anarcho-capitalism is got to be about the only way you can work with that. You have to be able to say, okay, I have 12 apples, 2 screwdrivers, some screws, and some oranges. I'm going to trade those for your watermelon, your whatever, and you work out that barter system, and maybe you even work out a currency that from now on we're going to trade in whatever it is, nickels or whatever. We're going to trade back and forth, and that capitalistic model makes it easy for one community to trade with another community because you work on the same level. It's whatever you voluntarily decide the value of something is.
That is also, I would say, something I align with. And I've never really been academic about any of this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there is a term anarcho-socialist or what.
Yeah,
I've heard of. There you go. I don't hear it much. I tune into your show. I turn into podcasts of various sorts. But I never really got academic about anarchism or that line of thinking, and that's fine by me. It's more like I've really lived it, in my opinion, because
that's a better way.
I've had I mean, not to go on and on. So just I'm trying to write my story on my website, so I'll lead people to my website.
Right.
But like I've basically done all kinds of shit. A lot of it was very loosely organized, without corporate sponsorship and shit like that. And it was exciting, creative time. And
nice.
And I guess I'm trying to understand really what my political philosophy is better today. And it is some sort of anarch. And I do think localism is the reality that we have to come back to.
Right.
And hey, liberals love that shit. Buy local, eat local.
Well, they used to, as you pointed out earlier.
Now it's like buy Amazon, have everything shipped. It's
right.
They're crazy.
Right.
People.
Right. But at the end of the day, I found that again, my flag is black. My real flag has no color on it. It has no. I'm not a mutualist. I'm not a anarcho this or an anarcho that. I'm just an anarch. I just rule myself, and I make the decisions that are best for me. And yes, that some people say, oh, but that's also very selfish. Is it? What's best for me is to live in a society where people get along. What's best for me is to not be a shitbag and rob from people. What's best for me is to raise my kids to understand that love and compassion is a better way to communicate than hate and anger. Those kinds of things I learned on my own. It's the same concept as put the oxygen mask on yourself first. It's that simple idea that you cannot help other people if you're unmanageable. If you haven't got yourself handled, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. So you have to do that.
It's exactly where I'm at in my life now.
Right. And I think most people are. What is funny is that most people, most of the things that we've discussed as it relates to governmental stuff, if you took the term anarchy out of it, most people are going to agree. Most people are going to agree that you shouldn't make somebody do something unless they're in the state and then they have their own agenda.
Yeah. I was talking about stuff with my mom, and she was afraid I'm like QAnon, Trumper. Oh my God, what are you becoming? Right.
No, I'm worse than that, Mom.
And I'm like, no, hold on. Just listen to what I believe things should look like. And then by the time I explained that, she basically agreed with anarchist principles. And
right.
So it's totally, and I think these hot button words, and they're always going to use these words and language as their tool to divide us. And it's a losing strategy, but it's very effective. And shit like that. I think the clock's running wild. So I think we've done a really good job of bringing it through over this arc and back into it. And what do you say? You have any last thoughts?
No, I would encourage people to for themselves, because you're right. You can't. I can't. This conversation is not going to convert everybody. It's not going to put everybody as, oh, wait a minute, I'm an anarchist, or oh, wait a minute, I need to look into this spirituality or that spirituality. This is not going to do that for everybody. There might be some dude out there that's like, oh yeah, these guys knew what the hell they were talking about and go about their business, but for the vast majority of people, they have to come to this on their own. What it is our job to do for anyone that is watching this, be the best person that represents freedom. Smile, be nice to people. The principles of freedom are the principles of love and compassion. They are the principles of doing unto others as you would expect to be done unto you. That is the principles of liberty. That is also the principles of being a truly spiritual person. So give the example. Be the smiling face of voluntarism. Be the smiling face of anarchism. Be the change that you want to see in the world. If you think that neighbors should give each other brownies when they move in, give brownies. If you think they should be pot brownies, make sure the neighbor knows that they were the best kind of brownies. And at the end of the day, I'm hoping that through the work that I do, and I have become a bit of an activist, and the work that Aquarian Anarchy does, that Chad does, that Nico does, that all of our guests do, is to make solutions, to offer up to people. We've talked a lot about theory. The difference between what I'm talking about and what some people just write books about is that I live this. I do this every day. When the people down the road needed a microwave, I went and bought them one. When my town needed somebody to run the food bank, I volunteered. Be the person. Don't wait for somebody else to step up. Step up. Be the person who leads us to freedom. Be the solution. Find out, learn, become your own person. It may be different. You may call yourself something different than any of us do. I don't care. I don't care about what people call themselves. I care about making the world a better place, holding each other with love and compassion, and teaching freedom.
Groovy, man. Well, I won't add any more, and I'll let this drift off. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You had a good time.
I did. This was fun. I love talking about. The thing is, I don't want to talk about like government and politics. I don't. I want to talk about religion because that's the thing I find the most interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm forced by people that are trying to do crazy stuff to my kids to have to fight for freedom.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, maybe we'll get to a place where you can retire into a spirituality podcast.
That would be awesome. And Chad and Nico be right there with me, just to be clear, because both of them are just wonderful people. I am blessed by the people that I am surrounded by, whether that is my wife and my children or my friends. I am blessed to have a community of people who live the kinds of values that I teach, which again is love and compassion.
Cool.
Thanks again for having me.
I do too. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to end podcast. Have a good one, man.
Have a good one.